I thank all the people present here for giving us their precious time and listening to our words, and for seeking the truth. As our topic states, consensual relationships, which are romantically engaged relations, are considered similar to robbery and murder, and by so they are punished by the law. Now let me ask you one question. Love, a thing that we've been praising over the years on poems and tales, and desire, a thing we've all been guilty of. Why should we be punished for that? In other words, let me ask this question again. Why should we be punished for being this vulnerable and emotional being that we all are? Here I am, standing here before you, and sharing our vision of the world with you. A world where lovers aren't criminals, but simply romantic spirits. Because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Because why wouldn't they be so? Now, really, what makes consensual relationships a crime? You can claim anything you want, but love isn't guilty of the charges that you've pressed. He or she may not be the best nor the one, but it's something we should all experience. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand the problems that these relationships can cause or is claimed to be causing, especially in the workplace, which is inequality, or in other words, favoritism. But the real problem here isn't what type of relationships can two co-workers have, but instead it's more of who these people are and what are their values. Because an honest person will never use their partner as a way to achieve success, but instead they will work hard for it to achieve it. Which leads me then to conclude that education here plays a big role. Plays a big role, since instead of debating about the criminalization of consensual relationship, we should maybe talk about the prioritization of education. And then, where will you be standing, your opponent? Thank you.
Consensual, adjective, involves consent. Consent, noun, agreement to do something. Consensual relationship, a hideous act that should and even must be criminalized. Dear opponents, dear audience, dear members of the jury, welcome. It seems quite mandatory for me to start my intervention, which will hopefully convince you by the opinion I'm defending, by highlighting some keywords that our debate will be roaming around today. Now let's take a look at today's topic. Consensual relationships shouldn't be criminalized. I mean, how can one defend such a proposition? How can one defend premarital sexual intercourses? My dear opponents look as if they forgot fornication's effect on our society, but thankfully, reminding them is what I will be doing today. So I suggest you listen well, grab your pens, and listen to what your perfect consensual relationship causes to our already damaged society. First, premarital sex is the #1 reason behind unintended pregnancies. In fact, a study led in a university in Nigeria showed that 68% of women who had premarital sexual intercourses ended up being pregnant without even wanting to. Now what I want you to think about is the outcome of those children, the outcome of those poor little babies that had no power over controlling their faith, those poor little creatures that woke up and found themselves in this hideous life as being illegal. Yes, dear opponents and dear audience, illegal, because according to the Moroccan law, any children born from a relationship out of marriage legally doesn't exist, which means that these poor creatures can't benefit from their most basic needs and rights, such as education, the right for an identity, and even healthcare. That is why, dear opponents, that I came to the conclusion that people who have consensual relationships are selfish, and people who defend consensual relationships are more selfish. Always remember, pleasure can last 5 minutes, but a misery can last a whole life. Now moving on to my second argument, which will be related to religion, of course. Our dear and beloved Islam. Since when consensual relationships have been legalized in our religion? Prophet Muhammad, let's all praise be on him, said, "Let your wives be a clothing for you, and you too be a clothing for them." This hadith shows us the beauty of marriage, why it is God's favorite institution. Islam has never forbid you from falling in love. Islam has never forbid you from traveling or practicing whatever activity you want to do with your soulmate. It just has put it under laws to make it more of an enjoyable experience for both of parts, to prevent them or even protect them from falling on the consequences of premarital sex. Furthermore, Islam has showed us some other bad effects of consensual relationships on our society, which are abortions and divorce and even corruption of the wives and kids. Now that I gave you all these bad effects consensual relationships have on our society, do you really think that it is fair to not consider them as crimes? Do you really think that consensual relationships should be legalized? The answer is clearly no. Thank you.
Freedom. How would the society be without you? Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Freedom is a sacred value, and everyone can practice it according to their own convictions. We must always strive for freedom and for the respect of private and personal life. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, freedom is to do whatever you want which doesn't harm the others. So how can a consensual relationship be harmful to others? I want a concrete answer to my question, their opponents. Now, let's move on to another subject which is related to freedom, which is privacy. As we all know, privacy is qualified as a fundamental right, essential to the protection of person's dignity. Therefore, this right is articulated in all of the majors, international and regional instruments. As it says in Article 12, at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, which means that everyone has the right to the protection against such interference or attacks. Consensual sexual relations do not concern society, but the exercise of this freedom should not go beyond public spaces. According to our ex-minister, Mohammed Oja. You know, this man holds a law degree, which means that he spends years and have more experiences in the law and the human rights fields. And in the human rights field, sorry. And is more able to see differences between rights and crimes, which is not your case, their opponents. I can understand that we live in an Islamic country, but this doesn't mean that we can't have our freedoms. For example, our Prophet Muhammad had never obliged or imprisoned someone for not being Muslim. He used to tolerate and he used to tolerate others' choices. So, to conclude my saying, consensual sexual relations should not be criminalized because it's a violation of freedoms and human rights.
POI?
Not taken. Even if the government criminalizes it, do you think it will somehow make a stop to it? I don't think so. Please be more realistic and face the truth. Decisions like this are what's making our country an undeveloped one. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear jury, government, good afternoon. And before going any further, I would like to clarify something. In all human societies, family is a primary unit, which is composed of at least two adults who live in a sexual relationship that is socially approved. In other words, society is made of families. Families are made of a couple of married people. And you might think that marriage is an insignificant paper, while actually it is the beautiful bonding and coming together of two souls. The paper part was only made to create a type of organization and to protect the couples. Not criminalizing consensual relationships only leads us to one way, a way where married and responsible people will fail at abstaining themselves and will eventually succumb to their primitive desires and end up endangering themselves, their partners, their kids, and indirectly the whole society by destroying its base, which is, as I said, family. And not only that, but by legalizing something that was made to frame sexual relationships, we are denying basic and fundamental rules of society. We are action civilized. While being civilized means while being civilized means having.
Can I?
Accept it.
Thank you. Now, according to the definition of consensual relationship, marriage is included. So all of you been saying right now is really doesn't really have doesn't really make sense.
I choose to talk about marriage. My friends choose to talk about premarital relationships, and we divided the part.
Yes, but you're against.
Consensual relationships are divided in two: casual sex that can be in marriage or outside marriage, and premarital sex. Did I answer your question? Action civilized, as I said. Action civilized, as I said. It has nothing to be with being civilized. While being civilized means being advanced and having rules and laws that follow a certain type of reason that my team and I today are trying to throw a light on. Action or pretending to be civilized is a totally different thing. It is to follow a certain image of a civilized society, and that can change over time or place. Otherwise speaking, it is to behave as a civilized society, while we are changing rules, adding laws, and without any type of reason, like what we're unfortunately living in our society today. People who live consensual relationships fear marriage. They fear divorce. They fear making a mistake that can endanger and ruin their marriage. Or they're just not responsible enough for that type of commitment. And I understand that. And all of them live in unsafe relationships that can end up quickly and tragically. I'll let my friends talk about that in details. And as Lord Byron said, while believing he was free of all rules, Don Juan becomes a slave of one, his inability to love and his irresponsibility. So please tell me, dear government, how can taking off this rule benefits our society in any way? Thank you.
Hi everyone. Today, as you already know, we're talking about a very sensitive subject, which is the consensual relationships. The opposite side will represent the law because they're trying to criminalize these relationships. And my friend and I will be representing the society. And as we know, the law was imposed by some members of the society, hoping that some instructions will keep the community safe and will make it more organized than before. Dear opponents, your attention please. In case of a consensual relationship in the same workplace, there is an agreement signed by both management and employees, provide that the employees will not allow to their relationship to interfere with or impact the work environment. So the problem that you can talk about is favoritism, and I don't allow you to say that a consensual relationship can lead to this at any way. And I want to add that, sorry. So what it does, in fact, is the values and personality and the education of the person. And while we're talking about education, why don't we add to our lovely Moroccan educational system the sex education? So the sex education, so as to create a generation capable to assume their responsibilities and especially their sexual relationships when they will grow. And before that I go back to my seat, I want to add that we must change how the society looks at the couples and their children too, just to minimize the number of abortion in our country. And you know how much abortion we have in our country, dear opponent. And I want to remind you that I want to remind you that you don't have the right to talk about the religion, because in our Muslim country we do have alcoholic stores and we buy it and we do punish those who buy it. No, and we sell it and we do punish those who buy it. So where's the logic in this? It's not taken, sorry.
We never.
Not taken. And I want. So the consensual relationship exists and you can do anything about it and they will stay because you're just trying to criminalize it, not to stop it, okay? And to conclude, what I'm trying to say, my dear friends, is that if God wants us to be perfect, He would create robots instead of human beings. So stop being law slaves and stop blaming the consensual relationships, and instead of looking for a solution to a problem that it doesn't even exist, try to solve the problems that affecting the development of our country. And finally, the fault is all in the education, the old mentality that you must change, my dear opponents, and the bad intentions of people. Thank you.
First, I'd like to deal with 2 points. The first one is that your intervention is totally false, and you will know the reason in my following intervention. The second point is that our opponents didn't answer the question that were raised by the Deputy Minister. So, I'd like a response as soon as possible, please. Today, I'm not going to be talking about science, medicine, or society. I'm just going to share with you something that I'm not particularly proud of, something in many ways I wish no one would ever experience. So here, I feel obliged to tell you the story of Rania. This is the story of a girl who was once madly in love with her husband. Everything was great and everyone was happy. She thought they would be together forever, but he didn't see it that way, so here is what happened. 1 week before she delivered her baby, that day was the saddest, most tragic day of her entire life, because she caught her husband cheating on her, which led her to a miscarriage of her little sunshine, who unfortunately didn't have the chance to come to this life as a bundle.
POI, please.
No, deny. As a bundle of, who unfortunately didn't have the chance to come to this life as a bundle of joy. Rania was beyond traumatized, and as a result, she attempted suicide several times and died by cutting her wrist, drug overdose, and even jumping from her own rooftop. But fortunately, she was saved and taken to the rehab center. So, after telling you this short sub-story, do you really think that we should not punish the person who is responsible of her current state? Do you really think that we should not punish the person who caused her this unbelievable pain? Do you really think that we should let her husband and his girl get away with their deeds? Well, the answer is clearly no. Unless you are not humans.
Again, POI, please.
No, deny again. In addition, studies have shown that 30 to 35% of the married girl have been suffering and going through the same mishap, who have been suffering and going through the same mishap, according to the UN Women. That's why. And you may say that, well, 30 to 35%, that's not a big number, but let me tell you that this rate not deny again. But this rate is almost half of the population of America, and yeah, it's half of the population of America, and that's why I invite you, dear opponents, to think about it for just a mere second. Okay, so last but not least, I strongly believe that there is a higher curse than the curse of justice, and that is the curse of conscience and compassion. And that's why it's fairly enough to criminalize the consensual relationships. And thank you.
I welcome all attendants present here and our dear beloved judges. Today, I'm standing in front of you to speak loud and clear and to convince all of you, including our opponent, that consensual relationships should never be criminalized. In fact, why should it? I've heard the other side ideas. I can even predict those to follow, since they all blame these types of relationships for anything, especially abortion. Unfortunately, for you, dear opponent, these are false accusations, and you seem to not be well informed about the subject. So please allow me to clarify it for you and pay attention to my speech. It's only the religion that criminalizes consensual relationships. The only advantage of this subject is that we get less unwanted births. So in marriage, there is roof, there is security. Because not all women have the courage nor the desire to abort. I agree that some relationships leave us heartbroken. Not only is that sad, but also it feels like we lost a part of us during the heartbreak. We become empty for living continuous relationships that are not founded on true love and spiritual connection. But we keep thinking we are free beings because that's what our ego wants us to think. Even if deep down we know is it not true, especially when love is not present. But the saddest fact is that these divine and pure feelings are victims of a law that obliges marriage to live in privacy. But we all know that privacy is how we can know if the other is the only one we truly want and desire. So the privatization of sexual experiences leads more often to failed marriages. These laws that stop men and women from being alone also stands against the build of relationships. Because Because not all people of opposite sexes that meet in a house are supposed to make love. Some people just prefer the comfort of home to enjoy their time, talk, laugh, share their joys and pains.
BOI, please.
Not taken. Sorry. So, the main reason behind the tremendous amounts of failed marriages is not the lack of love, but the lack of friendship, which is killed by this society and all the rules and judgments it built. The goal here is not to prove anything related to sex, but to realize that this law is built on religion, and that in our case, here in Morocco, those who are free not to be faithful are despised by society. Some go against the law and have sex, even if they are religious, hoping that it's their right. and that it's not punished by law nor by God. Thank you.
Well, before I start, by not taking our POI doesn't mean you're gonna win, okay? Then, well, while I was searching, I found that the majority of people go out from this kind of relationship as victims. Dear audience, I choose today to finalize the pack of impact with some medical bad effect that this kind of relationship bring to our societies. You'll face in my speech some scientific, medical, scary terms, but don't stress. The most important is to get the number of this disease and its huge impact. Well, this is why I invite you all and you, dear government team, as a special and VIP guest to listen to what I'm going to say. According to WHO, World Health Organization, every day some 500,000 young people, mostly young women, are infected with an STI, which means sexually transmitted disease. Among them we found HIV, hepatitis B, genital herpes, and genital warts. Want more? I'll give you more. Research studies showed also that the rate of gonorrhea, trachoma are getting higher. Besides, we face also unwanted pregnancies, babies thrown in the garbage can, in the streets, and all of that is due to unprotected sexual... Yes?
If every soul will be judged by the Creator, why does humanity have to interfere?
What? Well, your POI doesn't have a relation with what I'm talking about now. I'm talking about medical effect. So maybe I'll answer you in the next 1 minute, okay? Thank you. So I was saying, I've been giving you, which lead us to think about abortion, which cause damage mentally or physically. Now I've been giving you a worldwide view. Let's move on to our dear Moroccan society, our dear Moroccan country, and see what's happening. According to the government of Morocco and health NGOs, 2.8% of the population has syphilis, which is another STI disease. 40% of the population reported cases with an STI are between the age of 15 and 29 years old. And we all know that this gap of age is the base of the society. An unhealthy, shaken, weak society base gives us a weak society. Morocco has experienced a large scale of AIDS due to this kind of relationship, which concentrates the most in urban areas and affects approximately 21,000 Moroccans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, 21,000 Moroccans as the UN estimates. This must be banned. This must be stopped. So after hearing all these pandemics, epidemics, and statistics, isn't it enough to consider this a crime? Of course, it is a crime, and a crime, and without any doubt, a crime.
Should I be the one to ask a question first? Say whatever. Okay, can I just take my picture? Lay them out. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I know this question was already asked, and it appeared that it was not asked at the right time. So you've said that it's a bad thing, religion forbids us to have consensual relationship, even though consensual relationship can be a sexual relationship or not. So by saying so, our question is, now this is what God says, and God is the one who's going to judge us, so why should humans interfere in that? And also religion, even though it punished us to have some consensual relationships, well, not forbids us, but almost, it also asks us to be tolerant over others.
Okay, she's done. You said that God's saying is to preventing consensual relationships is God's sayings.
Almost.
Because God's saying is not applied, that's why the law in our country should interfere to make that law happen. That's why the law feels obliged to stop consensual relationships. Why consensual relationships are banned? Because of their bad effects that I gave you. They lead to bad medical conditions, abortions, suicides, depressions, loss of self-respect, and also loss of family support. So after giving you all these bad effects, you still think that consensual relationships aren't crimes? Consensual relationships cause medical conditions, and medical conditions that are bad cause death. So consensual relationships are crimes. Consensual relationships should be criminalized. Thank you.
Okay, I just need to also say that as my friend Willa said, it's better for our country to avoid such problems, medical problems. It's better for us to start teaching sex education so people will be much more aware of what's going to happen.
But sadly, sex education isn't taught in our country.
That's why it should be.
So we feel obliged that we should apply the law. Since we don't have any sex education that teaches us that we should use protection, this means that we will get these diseases. We will get death at the end of time. That's why consensual relationships should be criminalized. Thank you.
Criminalizing it or not.
So you said in your arguments that we shouldn't criminalize consensual relationships because we have an open society and we choose to be Muslim or not. So we shouldn't be obliged to follow Islamic rules, and I go against that because all religions in all over the world criminalize consensual relationships. And if you want, just give me one example of a religion that doesn't criminalize consensual relationships. And that, of course, we're not talking about the fact that religions criminalize. We talk about the reason why every religion around the world criminalizes consensual relationships, and that for obvious reasons that my team and I were trying all day long to tell you. And unfortunately, I don't think you got one.
If you go and check the definition of the marriage in Islam, you'll find the fame, which means that after what, according to scholars in the education Islamic fields, says that the fame in the definitions mean that if everyone knows that you are in a relationship with someone, you're considered married without papers.
And yes, as I said in my intervention, and I guess you didn't hear me, I said that the important part is that the relation is socially approved. If the society approved that sexual relationship between those two couples is approved, then papers are not that important, because those papers were only created to make a type of organization and to protect couples, while back then there were not any papers, or were they? I guess they were, probably, because those papers were made to protect, and as I said, they don't have any relation with the fact that there is a consensual relationship, or that we must criminalize consensual relationships. There is no sight in it.
Thank you. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I can see clearly that you didn't search enough about this subject. And that's seen when you declined my two POIs. And I think that you don't have the courage to face me during the debate, of course. And I want to give you some information that can help you. And it's according to the Moroccan Constitution, law number 490, the consensual relationships should be criminalized. But no, this law is imposed, but it's not applicated. So how can you stop the consensual relationships when it do exist and it will stay even you want to or not? Thank you.
Okay, so I was, as Salma said, by denying two POIs doesn't mean that I'm lack of information or that I am afraid to define you. So the second thing is that you were talking about law, and I didn't get your point because you were talking about laws and something like that, not applying laws. So I didn't get your point clearly. What do you want to tell me? And I have a question for you. Not criminalizing the consensual relationship will only lead to one thing, which is the rate of marriage will only decrease. Thus, the rate of single mothers will increase, and which will result on the rate of the criminality, prostitution will also increase. So how can you explain all of these states?
Can you? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. How? Thank you.
Okay, well, I will ask you some questions and I hope you will answer. Imagine a world without consensual relationships. Like, I'm talking about a world where we are supposed not to have any relation without anybody. I think, like, I'm not imposing our religion in this subject. I'm not imposing Islam in our subject. But the main reason of our existence, I think, is to complete like, if I am a woman and I have I need a man to complete my, like, my desire, my my existence and all that stuff. So I think I am supposed to be loved, to be protected, to be whatever. So I need a man in my life. I need a friend. I need a brother, whatever.
Well, dear government team, you've been talking from the beginning about love, about freedom, about rights. But don't you think by talking about, doing whatever you want, you're touching somebody else, right? Well, now I want you all to pay attention with me for a couple of seconds, because this is about to define the whole debate. My team and I are not here to stop you from loving. My team and I are not here to stop your freedom. My team and I are here to talk about an illegal thing, which is consensual relationship. To talk about an illegal thing that causes damage to our society. Damage to our society, the society you live in, you live in, you live in, I live in, we all live together. So, dear present in this cinema, the main idea after all, if you want to love someone, make love with someone, then let it be under laws. Because by the end, we are humans and not animals. Period.